Hi, friends. I'm very excited to start this new chapter book. It is my favorite book to read at the end of the school year. We're not there yet. Got a couple more months, but I just wanted to start. This is The Tale of Despereaux by Kate DiCamillo. Book 1, A Mouse is Born. Chapter 1, the last one. The story begins within the walls of the castle and the birth of a mouse. A small mouse, the last mouse, born to his parents, and the only one of his litter to be born alive. "Where are my babies?" said the exhausted mother. When the whole ordeal was through, "Show me my babies." The father mouse held one small mouse high up. "There is only one," he said. "The others are dead." "Mon Dieu! Just one baby mouse?" "Just one. What will you name him?" "Oh, all of that work for nothing," said the mother. She sighed. "It is so sad. It is such a disappointment." She was a French mouse who had arrived at the castle long ago with the luggage of a visiting French diplomat. Disappointment was one of her favorite words. She used it often. "Well, what will you name him?" repeated the father. "What will I name him? Will I name him? Oh, of course, I will name him. But he will only die like the others. So sad. Oh, such a tragedy." The mother mouse held a handkerchief to her nose and then waved it in front of her face. She sniffled. "I will name him, yes. I will name this mouse Despereaux for all the sadness and the many despairs of this place. Now, where is my mirror?" Her husband handed her a small shard of mirror. The mother mouse, whose name was Antoinette, looked at her reflection and gasped. "Toulouse!" she said to her son. "Get me my makeup bag. My eyes are afraid." While Antoinette touched up her eye makeup, the mouse father put Despereaux down on a bed made of blanket scraps. The April sun was weak but determined and shone through the castle window, and from there squeezed itself through a small hole in the wall and placed one golden finger on the little mouse. The other older mice children gathered around to stare at Despereaux. "His ears are too big," said his sister Merlot. "Those are the biggest ears I've ever seen." "Look," said his brother Furlong. "His eyes are open, Paul. His eyes are open. They shouldn't be open." It is true. Despereaux's eyes should have not been opened, but they were. He was staring at the sun reflecting off of his mother's mirror. The light was shining onto the ceiling in an oval of brilliance, and he was smiling up at the sight. "There is something wrong with him," said the father. "Leave him alone." Despereaux's brothers and sisters stepped back and away from the new mouse. "This is the last," proclaimed Antoinette from her bed. "I will have no more mouse babies. They are such a disappointment. They are hard on my beauty. They ruin for me my looks. This is the last one. No more." "The last one," said his father. "And I'm sure soon he'll be dead. He can't live, not with his eyes open like that." But reader, he did live. And this is his story. There's Despereaux, little baby. Chapter 2, Such a Disappointment. Despereaux Tilling lived, but his experience was cause for much speculation in the mouse community. "He was the smallest mouse I've ever seen," said his Aunt Florence. "It's ridiculous. No mouse has ever been that small, not even a Tilling." She looked at Despereaux through narrow eyes, as if she expected him to disappear entirely. "No mouse," she said, "ever." Despereaux wrapped his tail around his feet and stared back at her. "Those are some big ears he's got," observed his Uncle Alfred. "They look more like donkey ears, if you ask me." "They're obscenely large ears," said Aunt Florence. Despereaux wiggled his ears. gasped Aunt Florence. They say he was born with his eyes open, whispered Uncle Alfred. Despereaux stared hard at his uncle. Impossible, said Aunt Florence. No mouse, no matter how small or obscenely large ears, has ever been born with his eyes open. It simply isn't done. He said nothing. His pa, Lester, says he's not well, says Uncle Alfred. Despereaux sneezed. Choo! He said nothing in defense of himself. How could he? Everything his aunt and uncle said were true. He was ridiculously small. His ears were obscenely large, and he had been born with his eyes open, and he was sickly. He coughed and sneezed so often that he carried a handkerchief in one paw at all times. He ran temperatures. He fainted at loud noises. Most alarming of all, he showed no interest in things a mouse should show interest in. He did not think of food constantly. He was not interested on tracking down every crumb. While his larger, older siblings ate, Despereaux stood with his head cocked to the side, holding very still. Do you hear that? That sweet, sweet sound? He said. I hear the sound of crumb cakes falling on out of people's mouths and hitting the floor, said his brother Toulouse. That's what I hear. No, said Despereaux. It's something else. It sounds like, honey? You might have big ears, said Toulouse, but they're not attached to your brain correctly. You don't hear honey. You smell honey. When there's honey to smell, which there isn't. Son, barked Despereaux's father. Snap to it. Get your head out of the clouds and hunt for the crumbs. Please, said his mother. Look for the crumbs. Eat them to make your mama happy. You're such a skinny mouse. You're such a disappointment to your mama. Sorry, Despereaux said, and he lowered his head and sniffed the castle floor. But readers, he wasn't smelling. He was listening with his big ears to the sweet sound that no other mouse seemed to hear. Chapter 3. Once upon a time, Despereaux's siblings tried to educate him in the ways of being a mouse. His brother Furlong took him on castle tours to demonstrate the art of scurrying. Move side to side, instructed Furlong, scrambling across the waxed castle floor. Look over your shoulder all the time, first to the right, then to the left. Don't stop at any point. But Despereaux wasn't listening to Furlong. He was staring at the light pouring in through the stained glass windows of the castle. He stood on his hind legs and held his handkerchief over his heart, staring up into the brilliant light. Furlong, he said, what is that thing? What are those colors? Are we in heaven? Gripes, said Furlong from a far corner. Don't just stand there in the middle of the floor talking about heaven. Move! You're a mouse, not a man. You gotta scurry. What? Said Despereaux, staring at the light, but Furlong was gone. He had, like any good mouse, disappeared into a hole in the molding. Despereaux's sister, Merlot, took him to the castle library, where the light came streaming through the tall, high windows and landed on the floor in bright yellow patches. Here, said Merlot, follow me, small brother. I will instruct you on the fine points of how to nibble paper. Merlot scurried up the chair and from there hopped onto the table, on which there sat a huge open book. It's hard to see the picture. This way, small brother, she said as she crawled into the pages of the book. Despereaux followed her from the chair to the table to the page. Now then, said Merlot, this glue here, it's tasty, and the paper edges are crunchy and yummy, like so. She nibbled the edge of the paper and then looked over her shoulder at Despereaux. You try, she said. First, bite some of the glue, then follow it with a crunch of the paper. And these squigglies, they're very tasty. Despereaux looked down at the book, and something remarkable happened. The marks on the pages, the squiggles, as Merlot referred to them, arranged themselves into shapes. The shapes arranged themselves into words, and the words spelled out a delicious and wonderful phrase. Once upon a time. Once upon a time. whispered Despereaux. What? Nothing. Eat, said Merlot. I couldn't possibly, said Despereaux, backing away from the book. Why? Said Despereaux. It would ruin the story? The story? What story? Merlot stared at him. A piece of paper trembled at the end of one of her whiskers. Just like Pa said when you were born, something is not right with you. She turned and scurried from the library to tell her parents about this latest disappointment. Despereaux waited until she was gone, and then she reached out and with one paw touched the lovely words, once upon a time. He shivered, he sneezed, he blew his nose into his handkerchief. Once upon a time. He read aloud, releasing the sound. And then, tracing each word with one of his paws, he read the story of a beautiful princess and a brave knight who serves and honors her. Despereaux did not know it, but he would need very soon to be brave himself. Have I mentioned that beneath the castle there was a dungeon? In the dungeon there were rats, large, mean rats. Despereaux was destined to meet those rats. Readers, you must know that an interesting fate sometimes involves rats and sometimes not, awaits almost everyone, mouse or man, who does not conform. We're going to stop here. Tomorrow I will start with chapter 4. I hope you enjoyed the start of the Tale of Despereaux.